we have a global audience, and there's a great amount of traction we also have on the social media. And we have this panel, which is right now streaming on eHealth Facebook page. And today we have an eminent panel with us, and we are going to discuss the healthcare sector uh, opportunities and challenges in the corona situation. So before I go ahead, I will request each of the eminent panel to please introduce about yourself and your organization, your hospital, and give us a context about your history of, of your organization also. So I will start with Gautam Khanna of PD Hinduja Hospital.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Ravi, for organizing this webinar and opportunity for all of us to discuss this important issue. So I am the head CEO of Hinduja Hospital. We have two hospitals in Bombay. One is a 400 bed hospital, and there's another 120 bed hospital. And we've been in existence for the last 65 years and plus. Right now, we are engaged in the battle against COVID. We have created a separate COVID facility in a separate building in our large facility, and modified protocols, and there is a separate team and separate wards for that, and separate isolation wards, separate isolation ICUs have been created. Our team is dedicated to handling this pandemic. Thank you.
Great, Gautam. Thanks for joining us. We are honored to have you here. Dr. Sunil Rao, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Sunil Rao. I am medical director, group medical director for Sahyadri Group of Hospitals. We have 8 hospitals, 6 of them are in Pune. Total bed strength of all these hospitals together is around 800 beds. We have 1 hospital in Nasik and 1 hospital in Karad. So these are our 8 hospitals. All of us are engaged in treating COVID patients, because in the beginning itself we had committed ourselves for fighting this along with Pune Municipal Corporation and Nasik Municipal Corporation also. COVID beds with isolation facilities and critical care facilities made available to corporation. And at present, we have 8 COVID positive patients being treated in our hospitals, including 1 in Nasik also. So that was the short brief.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil Rao, for joining us. We are honored to have you here. May I request Vivek to introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, eminent panelists, and good afternoon to the participants who joined us live today. I'm Vivek Suryavanshi. I'm the Regional Sales Manager for Advanced Sterilization Products. Advanced Sterilization Products is a global leader today in infection control. We primarily work in the space of instrument reprocessing. We have got products and solutions around that. I have experience in bringing innovative and effective solutions for preventing infections in hospitals. I have varied work experience of almost 14 years in various medical device companies across various roles in business development. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. Thanks for joining us. May I request Dr. Rajendra Patankar to please introduce yourself?
Hello. Hi, Ravi. Thank you for inviting us today, all of us. I hear warm afternoon for all of you. I head Jupiter Hospital, Pune as the Chief Executive Officer. Jupiter as a group has 2 hospitals, one in Thane, which is almost 12 or 15 years old. And the hospital in Pune is a fairly new one. It's about 2.5 years. We are into this pandemic along with the Pune Municipal Corporation. Yes, we have identified isolation critical beds as well as isolation areas in the hospital. But at this point of time, we do not have any positive case. We did have a few suspected cases, but fortunately, they turned out to be negative.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajendra. Thanks for joining us. May I request Dr. Deepak Patkar to kindly introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Deepak Patkar. I am the Director of Medical Services of Nanavati Hospital. We are a part of Max Healthcare, which consists of 16 hospitals. 15 are in northern region, Delhi NCR region, and some in Dehradun and Haryana. Our hospital, we have partially converted into COVID hospitals. So out of 3 buildings, 2 buildings have been converted into COVID hospital. And as we speak now, we have about 60 COVID patients admitted, out of which 20 are in critical care. I'm also the current president of Indian Radiology and Imaging Association. So as an associate, where there's no availability of PCR testing, we are creating protocols for CT scan and X-rays to detect COVID patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. Thanks for joining us. May I request Dr. Tarang to kindly introduce yourself?
Very good afternoon, Mr. Ravi. Dr. Ravi, thank you so much for having us here today. And I'm the CEO of Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital and also the Reliance Foundation Hospital facility at Seven Hills, which was the first COVID facility developed at country level. We are also we also are doing the laboratory testing for the COVID positive patients now almost 2.5 weeks. We have started that, and it's been a real-time interesting experience on ground to manage a COVID hospital as well as a non-COVID hospital. So, so far so good. By chance today we have completed the discharge of 102 patients out of the facility COVID-free. So in those numbers, somewhere these are a little bit of contribution that we have played. Also are doing the
Fantastic. Dr. Tarang, thanks for joining us. May I request Dr. Salesh to kindly introduce yourself? I can't see him here on the camera.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Can you switch on your video, please?
I'm trying to switch on. It's not getting switched on. I don't know why.
Okay. Please speak.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Shailesh Puntambekar. I'm the Medical Director of Galaxy Care Hospital in Pune. We are basically laparoscopic and robotic cancer unit, and we are a part of Care Group of Hospitals, which are 16 hospitals all around the country with 2,700 beds. And we are basically treating purely cancer patients over here. And we are in Pune. We have a lot of corona patients in Pune, but our hospital was designated to treat the cancer patients. And so at present, we do continue to treat cancer patients with taking all the precautions, because these are considered as some semi-elective patients. And this is how we are based right now in Pune.
Great. Thanks for joining in, Dr. Salesh. After this round of introductions, I have the first presenter of the panel. This is Mr. Vikram Suryavanshi, who is the Regional Sales Manager West, Advanced Sterilization Products, ASP. And he will be speaking on how can technology reduce healthcare associated infections and increase operation room efficiency. So over to Vivek.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Just share my screen.
Yeah.
Confirm whether it's visible.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon once again, esteemed panelists, and good afternoon to participants who have joined us live today. I would like to again introduce myself. I am Vivek Suryavanshi, Regional Sales Manager, Western Region for Advanced Sterilization Products. In Advanced Sterilization Products, we basically are in the space of instrument reprocessing. We are global leaders in infection prevention. We have got products and solutions which are based around instrument reprocessing, which are helping healthcare facilities to protect patients during critical. Today, I'm going to speak on how technology can reduce healthcare-associated infection and improve operating room efficiency. The other day, I was just looking at this particular article, which was published by The Hindu, and I was startled with this headline, which said, when hospitals infect you. Usually, a particular patient will visit a hospital to get rid of some of his ailments and infection. But if you hear a hospital's saying, basically a statement where hospitals is going to infect you, it sounds very scary. But yes, that is the fact of the day-to-day. There are hospital-acquired infections of various types. This article also had a mention of a 2015 study which was conducted to find rates of hospital-acquired infections and antimicrobial resistance. And the numbers were very shocking. As per WHO, the HAI accounts to almost 2 million cases and about 80,000 deaths per year, which is again a huge number. The other fact which came out of this particular study was that the HAI rates were higher in India than those reported by CDC in US. Hence, the risk that a patient will develop a HAI was as high as 1 in 20 in US, 1 in 10 in Europe, and for developing countries like India, this number was 1 in 4, which is again a big number. This is when there is currently no reporting system today in India, wherein or a second repository system wherein hospitals have policy to report infection cases. So just imagine if this gets into this, there is a system in place, these numbers are going to be really high. This study also talked about various causes hospital-acquired infections, various causes of hospital-acquired infection, and today we have got various committees in the hospital to take care of this, and the top reason which came out was the lack of compliance infection control. So we have got various guidelines today which hospital sets to take care of infection control, but adherence is one of the critical concerns today. And the two top most reasons which were listed was poor hand hygiene and use of outdated technology. So these are the two top reasons. There was another study which was published earlier by WHO, which mentioned that HAI rates for every 100 hospitalized patients, 7 in developed and 15 in developing countries will acquire at least one of the hospital-acquired infections. That is SSI, COUTI, VAP, or CLABSI, of which 22%, staggering 22%, is contributed by surgical site infection. And the top reason for this as well is because of improper cleaning and sterilization of instruments and equipments during the procedure, surgeries, or wherever they are being used. CDC recommends to follow Spalding's classification, where all surgical instruments are classified as critical instruments, which ideally must be only sterilized. As we all know, sterilization can be achieved by steam sterilizers, EQ sterilizer, or a plasma sterilizer. But today, even today in India, there are facilities which still compromise for sterility. There are hospitals which are still using protaldehyde, orthopaldehyde, most common names are Cidex and Cidex OPA, in their hospitals to so-called sterilize. But these chemical disinfectants only disinfect your instruments. So the patient is always at a higher risk to catch one of the acquired infection. That most importantly, it is going to be surgical site infection. The healthcare facility is usually resistant to adopt to new technologies or methods easily unless it is going to add revenue to the hospital. Infection prevention today is one such space where investments do not flow easily. If the time has come, but today this is the right time wherein the hospitals need to upgrade their practices from disinfection to terminal sterilization, which can only help them to reduce infection which are caused due to improper instrument processing. Every day today, millions of people around the world visit various hospitals, but the patient which is going into the hospital is unaware that he might be impacted by one of the hospital-acquired infection. So hospital-acquired infection not only threaten the patient's health and life, but also bring additional economical burden to the patient especially, and because that is only because of the prolonged hospitalization. These delays usually create a lot of trauma to the patient, which adds to his suffering. And this can also affect the mobility of the patient. More often today, to tackle hospital-acquired infection, antibiotics are the common solution. And we are actually getting into a bigger menace, which is going to be antimicrobial resistance. So this is a new thing which is going to come up, and this is a bigger menace than hospital-acquired infection. All these costs today are bared by the patient. But I think with the intervention of insurance companies, this might change sooner or later. So how do we tackle this hospital-acquired infection and ensure patient safety? When it comes to infection caused due to improper cleaning and sterilization, CSSD is the department, the go-to department, which actually plays a critical role in managing these infections. But this department today is most of the times looked at as a cost center. CSSD ideally is the heart of the hospital when it comes to infection control and quality treatment. Because this is a department which ensures that all instruments used in various departments of the hospital, be it OPD, be it various wards, be it critical areas like ICU or OR room, the instruments are reprocessed in this particular department. Hence, if there are any gaps in the reprocessing, this is directly going to hamper the infection control of the hospital. So can we do a drastic change to this the particular department? Can technology help us? So as administrators, as hospital owners, so these are some of the questions which come to our mind before adopting to any new technology. Will this particular technology is going to help hospital to better the repair and replacement cost? Is it going to save power and water costs? Will this particular technology be able to integrate into my hospital IT system? And more importantly, in today's world where NABH is one of the critical areas, whether it will be able to give me audit ready data. And the most important question which comes to your mind is whether CSSD can be a revenue center. This is where our new generation all clear STARAD systems from ASP will help hospitals to get benefits. STARAD is a low temperature hydrogen peroxide gas plasma sterilizer, which is validated and endorsed by US FDA. STARAD comes in various capacities. Apart from the benefits which I mentioned earlier, STARAD helps in rapid turnaround of instruments because of the fast sterilization cycle time, which varies from 24 minutes to 47 minutes, depending upon the models hospitals. It has the flexibility of sterilizing wide range of materials, be it plastics, be it rubbers, and more importantly, heat labile instruments like telescopes and camera heads can be sterilized in this particular equipment, or otherwise, most of these are getting compromised today for sterility. More than 23,000 medical device manufacturers like Karl Storz, Richard Wood Smith and Nephew, Stryker, you name it, they have endorsed STARAD as a validated system for safe sterilization of their instruments. Therefore, to reduce the turnaround, therefore, this particular equipment helps to reduce turnaround time of your instruments, which directly helps to increase OR efficiency. Because indirectly, this particular benefit helps you to perform more surgeries with limited set of inventory. Currently, in India, we have got more than 535 plus installations across India, where installations are there from as small as 10-bedded hospital right up to a tertiary care hospital and various government setups. As we are discussing about HAI in my previous slide, for which hospitals already have a dedicated HICC committee, which is taking care of infection control. But now we have entered into a situation which no one would have ever imagined. Yes, I'm talking of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic situation. The coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is the defining global crisis of our time. I think this is one of the greatest challenges which we have faced today since World War II. Currently, to tackle this situation, healthcare facilities actually require hand rubs, infrared thermometers, PPE kits, N95 masks, and other essentials like ventilators to tackle the situation. And there might be a laundry list which might be required for tackling this particular critical situation. But this being a pandemic today, there has been an increased demand of these N95 masks, which has created a global shortage of these N95 masks. This is where ASP has been proactive enough to tackle the situation of shortage. Just recently, US FDA has published this EUA, that is an emergency authorization, to de-sterilize N95 masks. So ASP has a qualified protocol for reprocessing these N95 masks, which will help hospitals take care of this particular shortage which is there of N95 masks. This also helps you to increase the lifespan of your N95 masks because these can be re-sterilized for a particular number of times. So, and already in most of the installations today in India, I've started taking benefit of this particular development which has happened given by US FDA. So I've already mentioned in my earlier slides that these are some of the benefits which a hospital will get on installing this particular technology. The bigger question still lies and remains is whether CSSD be a revenue center. And answer to that is yes. I would like to share an actual example from one of our installations. This is 800 bedded in multi-specialty hospital in one of the metro cities, which has got 16 operation theaters and performing more than 50 surgeries a day. They have got 2 units today of our system of SARAD for more than 4 years now, and they have been running approximately 15 cycles per day. What this hospital has done, they have categorized their load into 3 types each of pouches and trays, which is they have segregated into small, medium, and large. And basis the cost of the consumables and other overheads which are required, they have assigned cost to each particular SKU which they have created, and with some margins they have started charging to the patients. So patients are only charged for those particular pouches and trays which is used in the operating room or in the procedure rooms. So this particular information is shared by the OT or the procedure room, whoever uses to the billing system, and that is where the patient gets charged. Just to give an example, today a lap chole or lap hernia surgery will be costing around 1.2 to 1.5 lakhs. So the sterilization cost in this case would be around 1200, which is not more than 1% of the average surgery cost. So if you see today, this is hardly any cost today to take care of infection control. Plus, this also helps hospital to generate revenue, plus taking care of other benefits which the hospital would be taking. So this way, this particular hospital has succeeded in turning the CSSD into a revenue center. So this is so if you see at my presentation today, this is how technology like SARAD has added value to hospitals by reducing hospital acquired infections and increase the OR efficiency. Here, I would like to leave you with a very short video on our all clear technology, that is ASP Stellar, which has got a complete ecosystem wherein ASP Access helps us to give IT connectivity across the system, and Velocity BR Reader, which has got readout time of 30 minutes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Here, I would like to make one last statement to the esteemed panelists and the online participants who are live today. With the current pandemic situation around and the post era, what we see after COVID, we see that definitely hydrogen peroxide gas plasma sterilizer is going to be a need in the hospitals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vivek. Thanks for this presentation, which was very timely and contextual. We will now start the discussion with the panel. And first question which we are going to discuss is that we are seeing the challenges because of the COVID-19 situation. There is a pressure on the healthcare infrastructure globally and also in India. And in this situation, how are you seeing the role of technology and innovations in this critical time? So I will request Gautam to start with his views, and I will request each panelist to limit it to 3 minutes each, so that we can go around other questions also. So Gautam, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. I have to say this, that this pandemic has affected, of course, every sector, but health sector in particular. And there have been challenges for the hospitals because this is all uncharted waters and we are all learning to navigate as we move along. And simple things like we have had to set up protocols for screening, for triage of the patients entering into IPD and OPD buildings, setting up separate isolation wards, isolation ICUs, and then figuring out what to do with patients who are not positive but who are suspects, because you can't mix them. So you need to have a separate suspect ward, and then you need to have a separate suspect ICU, learning to do that. And then what happens to people who may have respiratory problems but they are not COVID? What happens to those? So learning to navigate thing is new for all the hospitals, and people have had risen up to the challenges and developed the protocols for that. And the other challenge which has happened in this lockdown is that many areas have been quarantined and have been in containment. So our workforce is also limited, and that also constrains the ability of the hospitals to handle, to run normal operations. From the demand side, what has happened is that since we have, to ensure the safety of our staff and of patients, we have stopped the elective procedures, and to ensure, firstly, to ensure social distancing and to ensure safety. That has resulted in a huge financial pressure on the hospitals, because on one hand, you are spending a lot on creating new facilities and buying PPE and other things for the COVID. And on the other hand, your regular patient flow is not there. So there was a study done by E&Y for FICCI, and they have estimated that if the occupancy falls down to 50%, which right now I can tell you most of the hospitals I know of are in the range of 20 to 30% occupancy total, they have estimated a loss of 7,300 crores a month for the sector, this sector. So if you imagine this situation to go on for 3 months, it's more than 20,000. If you say 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, you're talking about more than 40 to 50,000 crores. And so that is a huge impact on the healthcare facility. Some hospitals will be able to tide over this crisis. Some may not be able to. And other aspects to just think about in this challenging circumstances is that our staff, which is working non-stop 24/7, I mean, our doctors, our nurses, our paramedical staff, and even our housekeeping and all the attendants, it is very, very tough on them. It's challenging. There are, morale issues. There are safety issues. So all these challenges we've had to tackle now. Thank you.
Great points. Gautam, the challenges are actually massive. Dr. Sunil, your perspective.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. We face the similar challenges which other hospitals are facing who are treating COVID hospitals. First challenge was from the bed side. From the beds, we had to convert our huge ICU into actually a COVID ICU. So we had to change the complete infrastructure in terms of air handling unit and making that an exhaust separately, directly to the atmosphere through a HEPA filter. So that was a small challenge which we faced initially. Then later on, many other challenges, like we had to create when you put the tube, endotracheal tube, you have to have a sort of a box from where you can put those were invented locally and made available. Then we also run a lab chain, and for that lab chain, for home collection, the sample collection, we had to convert a small booth we had to make. So that innovation we carried out. Then, as the previous speaker also said about N95 mask, we don't have that luxury of using his Sterirad, but we did use ultraviolet device, UV device, to start reusing N95 masks. Then we also made some changes in the way the entrance is designed, the exits are designed, the lifts have been reserved specifically for this purpose, and making people go in a particular direction right from triage OPD, that is from the entrance itself. And that was another challenge which we had to face. And as Mr. Khanna also said about the staff is a big issue in terms of the moment the first COVID case came positive, we had almost 15 resignations which came up in different fields, whether it is doctors, nurses and all. And we had to deal with that in a motivation talk and getting them huddled up and talking to them, making their arrangements, the hostel in terms of within the hospital itself, because all beds, as he said very rightly, beds are not full. So we had to convert some of them into the hostel as such, provide them food on the spot, and then carry on with our job. Another very interesting change which we have done recently is also about on the basis of ICMR guidelines, as well as some of the guidelines which Bombay people have released, to convert our asymptomatic contacts into immediate workforce. So immediately after first test negative, they are back into the working force. So that has helped us in revive our depleting manpower across the hospitals, and that innovation really helped. And another booth for swab taking we have done based on Chennai model, which is very prevalent there. So that also we got it converted and made in-house, that booth for swab collections in the entrance itself, so that people don't get exposed. At the same time, our lab staff is able to manage those with very less PPEs, because preservation of PPE is one of the challenges which all of us, I'm sure, are facing. more so with more beds being opened up for this. We are also now come up with a dedicated hospital of 35 beds specifically for COVID, in which we are also doing all these innovations are there. Some of the old hospitals which we had, we did not have the compressed air also there. So we had to do with all those old ventilator models where compressed air is built in, and similar type of designs changes also we have done. So this was a short innovation kind of things. More on the economic side, I will speak later as my turn comes. Thank you.
Perfect. Dr. Sunil, thanks for highlighting the human issues, the resignation issues. I think very sensitive situation. Dr. Tarang, your experience of handling the COVID-19 challenges.
So I guess challenges faced by all hospitals are more or less the same. But I think the biggest challenge which I personally felt was to change the mindsets of healthcare professionals. The reason is because as being a doctor, as we work, and also being a surgeon myself, I know that at times it is we feel that it is not that, that important to follow infection control advices, to follow hand hygiene advices, to follow PPEs. And I think there was a dramatic change which we had to brought about over very few hours, or I think 2 or 3 days. We started our screening as early as 4th of March, or I think 3rd of March, which was quite early. But initially there was a lot of resistance from the ground. And I think most of the doctors thought that the management is probably overreacting because no other hospital is putting such restrictions, at least in the vicinity. And that mindset change was most important and most critical of the challenge, because if the mindsets are right, like today, my doctors and my nurses ensure that they are all covered with PPE. My procurement has a direct connection with them. So anywhere anybody needs, they are given those supports. But initially it was a critical time because in spite of everything being there, they were just resisting that it's not required. So that needed a lot of work on ground, and economically, all our P&Ls are flat. So I think that Gautam has rightly summarized. And but I think the mindsets which we have been able to now to some extent change. So these were done over a period of time because we had to, over a few hours, create videos, create verbal dialogues. I think there has not been, there was a time when in one day I addressed 2,500 odd people in batches over a call and ensured that everybody's questions were answered and addressed, and everybody started to realize. After that, obviously, I lost my voice for 2-3 days, but I guess those things were important because it's the human beings which are serving, who are treating, and their mindsets have to be tackled. The supply chain and all, yes, they are the common challenges, and I'm sure this human mindset challenge is also very common. And a lot of planning, and at every step, I think all the CEOs have gone through a lot of planning. And will continue because this will not end so soon. So I think we are all every day learning and gearing up.
Thank you, Dr. Tarang. Human mindset issues, very difficult to handle, of course. Dr. Deepak, your challenges, like what you observed.
Something similar to Dr. Tarang said. So we started our triaging very, very early. So people thought that we were overreacting. We have 3 buildings in our hospital. So quickly we converted one into the COVID suspect and COVID positives. Same problem we faced. The surgeons thought we were overreacting. We were the first ones to start taking surgeries only after COVID testing was done, which was very difficult few weeks back. Counseling people was very, very important. So training is one area we really focused on, and we continue to do that. So 8 to 10 trainings happen every day. We started something innovative. So our nurses and doctors were staying outside. So people working in COVID area, we quickly created about 250 beds within the hospital, the old nursing college building. We created a separate lift for our AKD patients. That was very, very challenging. We used industrial lift. Few of the doctors were very enthusiastic and positive, especially the intensive care team. So that really helped us. We used them to train other doctors. Few nurses we picked up, they were training nurses. In fact, we are helping one of the MCGM hospital for training them. Impact is going to be very, very high. We understand that, and it's going to be long term. So revenue loss is there, but we're taking this as a social cause. Our footfalls to OPD have dropped from 1,000 to about 150. Triaging is very, very strict. Imaging has dropped to about 20%. We are trying to put up a portable CT next to the triaging OPD, where we are giving green bands to triage negative patients and red bands to triage positive patients. In fact, all the staff also goes through this every day. So as I'm talking, I'm wearing a green band. I don't know whether it is visible. So unless you have green band, you are not allowed to enter 2 towers. Red band, 1 tower. Our billing has been done separately. No touch technique completely. We are proposing online payment for every patient. So we are trying to innovate, use technology. Our app was very, very inactive, the Nanavati app. We have made it almost compulsory for entire staff, so they get their updates digitally. Entire staff is encouraged to use video calls rather than meeting each other. Social distancing is, of course, important, but most of the things can be done on video calls. So we are encouraging that. Our psychiatrists, which were completely sitting at home, we now tell them to, at least we made a group of 5 psychiatrists. So they give counseling not only to the patients, because they're in for 14 days, 10 days, etc. A loss of these patients is really long. The people who are trained and go into quarantine, we conducted Antakshari for them last night. We make them play online games. One of us from the top management tries to talk to them so that they feel encouraged and they know that they're not alone in this war. So a lot of positive things we started. Chemotherapy patients, radiotherapy patients, all of them undergo, even with little bit of suspicion, they undergo PCR testing. And next week, as we talk, we're going to make compulsory PCR testing for all the patients coming in. Relatives, we now have 0 relatives policy, even including ICUs. The relatives also, out of 140 occupancy that I'm talking about, only 15-20 relatives where patients are completely moribund are allowed, and only after PCR testing. So a lot of things had to be changed, and they were very, very important, and we did that. And as Tarun said, all of us are making mistakes. We are improving every day, learning every day, and trying to apply it the next day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. Important inputs, both about mental health and handling the human resource issues. Dr. Rajendra Patankar, I'm sorry.
Patankar.
Yes, Patankar. I'm sorry. Apologies.
Yeah, so I think this is a lifetime experience for all of us. None of us have had any past experience of handling such a situation. And it's a learning experience on a day-to-day basis. So by that standard, we're all learning every passing day. And a lot of speakers previous to me have expressed a lot of situations they are going through. Whether it is, I mean, we started with shutting down our health checkup areas as a first step in early March. And a lot of people said, why do you want to shut health checkups? And slowly we decided to sort of curtail or suspend our outpatient departments. And then, of course, by the time we started the lockdown, all the elective surgeries, inpatients were almost nil. So there are hardly occupancy would be around 20 to 30%, like Gautam rightly pointed out. And yes, it's a national calling. So we are right at the front as a part of healthcare organization. And we have to face it because we are the ones who people will look up to in this pandemic. So we will do our bit. But of course, there are a lot of constraints which we have to face too. I mean, constraint with respect to procurement of material, procurement of equipment, manpower, retaining those manpower, ensuring that their morale is kept maintained. In fact, at our hospitals, we decided that one entire floor was kept for staff who would be parked here in the hospital itself. So duties were arranged in a manner of 4 days or 7 days, and then they were given off for another 4 days, and another team used to take over. So intent was to have an approach where there are 4 sets of teams which are created to handle, and once one set of team is there in the hospital for, let's say, 4 days, then they take a break. One thing which we started immediately as soon as we realized that this would go further is that we started outpatient, teleconsultations. And we have found an amazing response on the video teleconsultations with patients, so that the patients who are staying nearby or who are also wanting to do follow-up with their surgeons or physicians who are staying out of the city could start doing that on the chat box or the video consultation system. And that has been a good benefit of technology for us, for doctors, and those who were under emergency situations or, let's say, semi-emergent situations. Only those we could get to the hospital, and after due testing, take them for either surgery or, unless it was a life-saving situation. We did face constraints initially with respect to testing, and I think we still do that because testing, of course, has improved substantially now, but it still needs to go a long way. But yes, now at least there is a position that we could test patients before we take them on to surgery, because certain cases, barring, the delivery cases for onco-surgeries especially, we do need to ensure that the patients are safe, my staff is safe. Various infrastructural changes had to be done in the hospital, and I'm sure everybody in the panel would have done the same in their organizations. So I think step by step, we are working towards stabilizing the situation. Hopefully, we get over this as soon as possible, because it is really hitting hard on us with respect to the cash flow and the finances. And I think it's going to be terrible if this continues further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajendra. May I request Dr. Shailesh to speak, please?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I hope you can see me now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So we are a cancer hospital. We are not actually fighting the COVID, but we are in a very different kind of a situation. Initially, we thought that once the COVID fear comes in, the patients will automatically start coming, less number of patients will start coming. But the problem is that people are pushed more panic button with the cancer, and we are having a huge flow of patients still coming in, wanting to take the consultations because they feel that the cancer is more devastating for them, especially those who are already diagnosed and who are in the process of receiving chemotherapy. So since these, we are, as rightly said by the CEO of Nanavati, we are also doing COVID testing, but we are doing cancer surgeries. The first important thing was to protect our staff, and we had to undergo a lot of training issues. We found a shortage of PPE when we ordered, but now because Care Group has come forward, so we have a lot of personal protection things available. The most important thing is that as the chief of the hospital and being a cancer surgeon myself, I had to lead from the front. So every day going to the hospital, seeing the patient, showing them how carefully and safely you can see the patient, and then doing the surgery actually lifted up the morale. The second thing that we told all the employees that no matter what happens, none of the employee will be off from the roster. His job will continue. The fear that they had in their mind was about their pay. The fear that they had in their mind was at the end of the day, the temporary staff may be sacked. So we gave them a very 100% assurance that for the next 3 months, we will manage our cash flow. The situation is grim. The occupancy is down to 20%. People are finding it very, very difficult to pay for their surgeries. So we have already cut down the regular charges of the surgeries like a social effort. So surgery which cost about ₹1 lakh, started doing it at 50,000 with no surgical charges. The reason being because these are cancer patients. So, we are trying to help the patients also. They want to get the surgery done, but they don't have the money. Taking out money from the ATM or standing in the long queues in the bank is a difficult thing. So we are using credits. We are allowing them. We are believing in the faith, and we are trying to build up the morale of our. We have a lot of professionals also, and as rightly said by all of them, the mindset had to change. We had to keep the people completely giving positive talks that finally you are doctors, you have chosen this profession. We all know the hazards. We are at the risk of getting these cancers, but then we have to be very careful and take all the important protective gears, but we cannot obviously shy away from our profession of not seeing cancer patients just because COVID is there. So we are continuing our consultation, and in fact it is a big surprise that every single day we get so many patients. But screening the patients at the outdoor, we allow only one relative at the most, and then they are screened through temperature. Every patient has his X-ray done before they are brought to the outpatients. If there is any surgery plan, we are doing COVID testing. But we are expecting in the next 3 months a huge fall in the revenue. But I feel that as our surgeries, we fall in the category of semi-elective surgeries or not exactly elective surgeries being cancer. We are still continuing our fight, and we hope that the situation will come back to normal within 2 to 3 months. But at the end of the day, I just want to give a ray of hope to all the people who have said about the revenue. Even in the worst recession period, if you see when the world was facing the recession, one industry which survived all the recession was healthcare industry. And I'm sure that once the lockdown is over, people are going to need the hospital for various elements for which they are staying home at this present juncture. So I think healthcare industry will bounce back within less time than the rest of the industry. And that is what I personally feel, because healthcare cannot take recession for a long time. People are going to fall sick. People are going to require doctors. And I think healthcare will bounce back within 3 months.
Great points, Dr. Sailesh. Amazing stories and amazing steps by your hospital to support your patients by reducing fees. Very inspiring indeed. So let me move to the next question, which is about infections. So infection has been a major culprit in hospitals. How innovative tools can possibly keep it at bay, ensuring patient is safe and sound health? So let me somewhat change the order here. So let me request Dr. Taran to respond first. Yeah.
Yes. So for infections, I think, as I said, we all have innovative measures. We are all using our steroids, and I think most of the hospitals, at least at our hospitals, we are doing emergency surgeries. We are doing deliveries also. We are doing plasties also. The most important thing which comes into play is the AHU and the negative pressure isolation. So since the Reliance Foundation Hospital has been built recently, it has come into operation since last 5 to 6 years. So it has the facility that in every theater we can cut off the supplies from the rest of the hospitals. We can create the pressures what we want to, because I think the key here is the negative pressure. So we at all levels take double measures. So we do use our steroids also. We the plasma sterilizers that we have, and even our CSSD has all the passages from CSSD to the theaters. They have the isolation pressures, which can be changed according to the need of the hospital. But in spite of that, we have maintained the occupancies at a very low level. And the most important thing that we are also doing is that we are doing very, very stringent and strong audits of infection control at all ends, whether it is how much hand hygiene is going on, how much PPE compliance is going on at every step. In every area, we have deputed a team leader who audits everybody in the surgical areas, in the procedure rooms, in the ward areas to see to it that everybody is in proper PPE. That person's job is only to ensure that. Because at the end of the day, we know that there is right now no established treatment. The only way to tackle it is disinfection, PPE, and hand hygiene. And we are at our end following all three. As everybody rightly said, in addition, what we are also doing is we are trying to ensure at Seven Hills that our Seven Hills staff is absolutely staying away. And luckily, we have those kinds of arrangements developed. I really feel that I think, at least from my experience, that it's been really experience as a CEO to be a part of a strong corporate group backing you, because that has been really a very big support. So that has really helped, because it looks like the entire Reliance group is actually working to take care of the healthcare workforce. So obviously we are very well supported. And even I was sharing it with somebody the other day that unlike most of the CEOs who are actually today worried about the P&Ls and top lines, I've never been even looking at it since last 2 weeks. And we have been just told to take care of you, your staff, your team, and that's about it. So we are really that way. I think Reliance Foundation is really helping. And this, I'm saying it from the heart as an individual who has worked across nations, in the various, at the global level. And I think at this point of time, such a strong support on infection control is the need of the hour. So from all ends, if tomorrow we want that support, okay, we want to purchase X number of sterilizers, we just go ahead. PPEs, kits, whatever is required, the aim is save lives. And that's why all of us are working hard here to save lives at Seven Hills and save lives at RFH.
Great to hear that, Dr. Tarang, that there's a strong focus on this topic. May I request Gautam to respond on this, please?
Thank you, Dr. Ravi, and completely agree with Tarang on this, that obviously strong protocols, disinfection, hand hygiene, PPE, that is the need of the hour. And one of the things is to ensure that it is done, because sometimes there is a big difference between the intent and the execution. So the regular audit of who's doing, whether it's being done or not, and also defining it for various departments. What we have done is that depending on the risk of various departments, we have defined the PPE levels and the criteria so that every department knows that what are they supposed to do, and it is standard guidelines which are stuck on the walls. So then even a technician knows what is the level of PPE and infection control practices he needs to practice. So I think that is one thing. The other thing I just want to add here is that one of the things you had mentioned earlier, some people had mentioned earlier about the changes. I think the infection control is one within the hospital. Second is, of course, to ensure that you don't get you don't import anything into the hospital. So for that, we talked about the triaging, and we talked about, and I think somebody talked about that before. The video consult is a good one. And simple things like social distancing in the lift, where we have patient areas, those have also been demarcated, that how many people can go, and we have demarcated areas which have floor stickers so that people stand only at designated places. It's simple thing like that. And the other thing which is required is that what we have done is we have looked at all departments of the hospital from an infection control point of view. For example, we've also looked at, other than the clinical department, we also looked at food services department, where our food is being made for the patients, what practices need to be done there, in housekeeping, in engineering. And like, for example, we talk about HEPA filter, we talk about negative pressure, so all things have to be taken into account. And Ravi, if I can just take a minute to answer, there are a couple of questions I saw on the, so just one question, there was somebody who asked about what happens when there is a quarantine, there is an infection in the hospital for some patient. So I think one of the first things, the lessons we had learned early on, is that to quickly get into contact tracing, and contact tracing of the hospital staff who has come in contact with the patient. So that needs everything, even including dietitians and housekeeping, cleaning and engineering and nurses and technicians and doctors, and also look at other patients who are in the same ICU probably. Then also we did the contact tracing of the relative of the patient who was positive. And because that person was sitting outside in the visitors area and probably interacting with many people. So that is a best practice to do contact tracing for them also. And then of course, regular cleaning, intensify the cleaning, so that now we have protocols that there are some areas which are cleaned every 2 hours. And then of course, the quarantine facilities we have for our staff. So that is one. And as a standard thing, I think now, as somebody said, that we need to take universal precautions. We have to assume that a patient who comes into the hospital may be COVID positive, although his test is negative, because the efficacy of the test is still 70%. So we need to take adequate precautions for infection prevention. And there was another question which I wanted to just answer. Somebody asked about, I think Subha asked about the morale of the staff and the patients. So what we have done is we have also done a panel of psychiatrists have a scheduled slot every day where people call up, and there's a helpline for that. We also have for our patients who are in the COVID wards, we realize that even they will need some help with mental health because they are in isolation for many days. So we have counseling for them too. And also we have counseling for patients who are not able to come to the hospital. So we have a tele triage for them, and our people counsel them on the phone on how, what to do. And the other thing which I am thinking what we are going to do now is, I think the way to prevent future infections is, of course, by doing all this, but also using technology like, remote ICU consultation, and maybe using robots, and also using lots and lots of data to analyze some patterns and take decisions based on that. I'm just going to stop here.
Excellent. So just to keep the time, actually we are already running late in time. So I have a suggestion that the next 2 questions which I have already planned are being asked by several other people also in the Q&A, which I can see. So what I will do is that I will request each of the panelists to look at the Q&A and also at the chat. Pick up the questions which are most relevant or which appeal to you, and so that we can finish this panel in the next 15 to 20 minutes. So may I request Dr. Sunil to look at the Q&A and the chat and see what you want to respond to?
Yes, sir. I can see one question specifically directed to me, saying that is hospital allowed or supposed to disclose the number of positive COVID patients being treated in the hospital as a precaution to other patients, oblique relatives of the patients? Very, very, very relevant question, I must say. This problem we started facing from the day one when corporation started spreading this, like from the day one. They started putting it on their dashboard. They started releasing the information to the reporters, and actually reporters beeline. Reporters kept on calling in the night and early morning, etc., to find out what happened to that patient, why was that area sealed off, why these patients kept on coming to you. So some of the blame has to go to the government authorities also, who are by naming they may not name the patient, but they are definitely naming the hospital, to the tune that the other day the Pune Mirror carried a story saying that so-and-so hospital of Sahyadri got sealed, which was absolutely fake news. Absolutely fake news. And the hospital which actually got sealed was in some other area from where that patient had come to our hospital. So this type of things are very, very common. I personally feel that we should not be revealing the name of the hospital because it unnecessarily creates panic amongst the residents of that area, as well as various other, since Sahyadri Group is actually entire Pune it covers. So what happens is even one effect in one branch carries the effect all over. So from infection control point of view, also it is better that since we have all made separate arrangements for like Mr. Khanna said, Dr. Tarang said, we have separate areas already designated for holding up the patients when they are suspected. When they are positive, you have a isolation wards created specifically, and also when they recover fully and their tests are carried out, after that to release them peacefully into the community back, and they can come back. At the same time, the surgeries, again, I wanted to raise this point since infection control we are talking about. So planned surgeries as well as emergency surgeries, both are being carried out and are being encouraged. Obviously, we have to also look at our P&L also. So all those things are being encouraged, but for example, in a commando surgery, which was carried out almost, I think we had spent 13 PPs specifically. And this was, never charged to the patient because it is just not possible to charge all of them and then also keep it within the package. So these challenges are there. In terms of one innovation which I had forgotten last time while talking, we have also a negative ionizer which we have installed in our ICUs, specifically in the COVID ICUs, just to reduce the load. Actually, we have also carried out a lab testing for this particular device, in which actual load, bacterial load definitely comes down, rather it becomes zero, as well as the spores also vanish completely. So we can't possibly do the studies on the virus, but definitely we can, it is assumed that we can bring down the load of the viral load can be definitely brought down in such areas where, in a specific areas. So that innovation we have carried out. In terms of other infection control practices, like all other hospitals mentioned, we also have, practice of the hand hygiene, infection control nurses, audits regularly. I also happen to be part of NABH. So we have this very strict protocols in terms of infection control. That is. This I wanted to mention specifically about this UV radiation I have already mentioned about, and segregation. Another point which Mr. Khanna mentioned specifically about the relatives. This caused, in first case, when we received first COVID case, we really faced a lot of harassment from the relative of the patient. So what we decided as a policy, that relative itself will also be segregated and quarantined, rather within the hospital premises in the area of the triage OPD, so that they don't move around anywhere. So they are also being provided various food items, etc. in there only, and they are counseled there only. Audio video counseling is carried out. Everyone in the ICU has a video calling system, so that nobody enters into the ICU from outside. From there itself, the relative is called, and they are, they can talk to the patient also. Most of that, all of us know from our data that almost 80% of the patients are really doing very well. There are few patients with a lot of comorbidities. Being a tertiary care hospitals, we find these cases where they are either on ventilator or not doing well. So that's what I wanted to bring to the forum. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Sunil, thanks for the inputs. Very important observations you have given. Dr. Rajendra, please pick up the questions you want to answer.
Sorry, I'm not able to see the questions on my screen here.
Okay. Look at the Q&A option in the bottom of your screen, and on the there's a chat option also. So can you see those buttons?
Let me try.
There is a question on telemedicine and also the hygienic factors to be used post corona outbreak.
See, there's a sudden realization of hygiene and hygienic practices across the country now. So, in fact, most of the hospitals where we come from, we always had a good infection control department, infection control team, and as per requirement of NABH as well. But normally these people are looked at intruders by a lot of areas in the hospital. And now suddenly they have a lot of acceptance and everybody is actually participating along with them to ensure that the staff, the patients are safe. And that's something which is coming up positively as a part of the whole learning process while this whole pandemic is being actually going through. And I think, see, it's very, very important that continuous training on ensuring best practices for patients and staff is maintained throughout, and that is something which will actually take us through this whole pandemic process. We are doing our bit, whatever is required. Most of the panelists have already shared a lot of things which they are doing, and I think that should be good enough. Anything else I did not see in the chat?
Okay, you please look at the chat and the questions. By the time I will move to another panelist, Dr. Deepak. You want to answer some of the questions, please?
Yeah. So I would take up on technology and innovation, what is happening as far as COVID is concerned. The best thing that our government did, I think, is early lockdown. We learned very, very early, and that really helped to flatten the curve. Arogya Setu app is another thing that has really helped. And I think healthcare industry, this is the best opportunity for us to tie up with IITs and other manufacturers. There are a lot of innovations happening in China, Canada, Europe, etc., to create anti-infectant fabric applications. People are using drones, people are using robots to track people, look at infected people, how to triage them at a general level. So I think hospitals should take initiatives on that. Because the data is available very, very quickly now, a lot of journals, including our radiology journals, picked up the problems very early and tried to innovate solutions. So when there is no PCR available, CT scan, X-rays, and point-of-care ultrasound are being used to pick up this disease early and separate out these patients. So that's a very, very good innovation. If you look at treatment, most of the people are saying there are no treatments available. But if you look at worldwide data, beyond giving just supportive treatment, people are trying vaccines. So there are 55 companies as we talk now working on vaccines. And typically, development of a vaccine takes 10 years. And currently, we are talking about vaccine getting ready in 6 months to 1 year for COVID patients. So that innovation is something that we can work on very quickly because the world has become flat and every information that comes out of every corner of the world is available to us. People are using anti-malaria medicines, people are using anti-leprosy medicines, people are using anti-cancer medicines. Plasma is one thing government is really encouraging of patients who have got cured from COVID to be used in sick patients. China, being infected first, really took first step forward. They created hospitals in 10 days. They started treating patients very quickly. They moved doctors very quickly. So our government, our own big hospital chains can take help of their model to move forward, to flatten the curve very, very quickly. Apps is the way forward. Keeping distance is the way forward. Keeping video calls, video treatment is probably the way forward. So technology is really helping medicine in getting rid of this disease quickly. So that is one area which all hospitals should concentrate on besides working locally.
Great. Dr. Deepak, thanks for the inputs. May I request Vivek to answer some of the questions? Vivek?
Dr. Gupta, with your permission, I would want to just share one thing which I think all hospitals should definitely look at, not only for COVID, but for any other situation which can come, is that all of us should also start focusing very strongly on the mental well-being. In the definition of health, we always only see physical well-being, but I think as a process, we should look at the mental well-being. So I think one of the things which I would want to share is that we created, I think on 10th or 12th of March, a group with our psychological counselors and a few psychiatrists together and our yoga specialist, who regularly now counsels the staff and the patients at Seven Hills as well as our own hospitals. And I think as administrators also, we are all going through a lot of stress. And I think this is something which will definitely go in the long run, because mental well-being is very, very important and key. Thank you.
Great point, Dr. Tarang. I think mental health is as important as physical health, and thanks for pointing this out. May I request Dr. Deepak to look at the questions and answer some of it?
I just answered one more question. One more question that needs to be answered is medico-legally, a lot of things have changed.
Yeah, sure.
2 hospitals have been sued by non-COVID patients that they got infection, which they may have got at home, that they got infection from the hospital because they were treating COVID patients. So we need to change the consents, which were done very quickly. We have to tell the patient that although you are in a segregated area, your chance of getting infection from hospital as well as from the environment and your home is higher. So we did that very quickly. A lot of work is happening on plasmapheresis, and I think hospitals in Mumbai, Maharashtra and around should work together to collect plasma from patients who have got rid of COVID and use it for patients who are sick, who are really sick on, say, in intensive care. And if we can work together, thousands of patients are getting better. And if we start a movement together to collect blood from these patients, and I'm sure they will agree, that would reduce our mortality rate quite significantly. This is one question that I wanted to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak.
Ravi?
Alesh. Yeah.
I just want to add a few things. One of the major things I think this is going to happen after this outbreak is that we will see the focus of the government changing towards healthcare. Healthcare has been always a last priority of all the governments. And I think now governments all around the world are going to realize that training the healthcare professional and bringing out the newer technologies to face the challenges in future are going to become now a country which has so many IITs and so many other technology oriented. We are still struggling to manufacture our own ventilators, which is like a little bit, we are still trying to import the ventilators from the other side. We should have been prepared to have companies which could manufacture the ventilators. This did not happen because the focus was never on healthcare. 0.9% of the GDP was being used. So people always thought we are going to die of atomic energy or any kind of war, but we are now realizing that people are going to die of biological problems. And this would probably go in a long way that the Indian government will focus on manufacturing and really look forward to make in India. They just talk on the paper that make in India. They never made it possible. None of the we are struggling to get N95. Why? We should have been prepared for it. We are struggling to get ventilators, and all the hospital management is saying we are trying to import, we are trying to get. But why it was not done in India before? Because nobody focused on healthcare professional. The doctors and the healthcare professional were taken as the last priority. Nobody focused on training the government doctors to face the crisis. IS officer undergoes training every year to upgrade his skills. Not a single doctor in government facility, not a single doctor in private facility is trained that if such crisis happens, we are now like a fire brigade trying to douse the fire when it has come. We never prepared ourselves. I think this is going to be our biggest wake-up call. Wake up, guys, doctors and the healthcare professionals will have to be the priority rather than all the manufacturers and the other things. I think this is one positive thing which I feel is definitely going to come out of this.
Such an important point, Dr. Sailesh. Like suddenly people are realized that how much like doctors are important, and people are in some areas, of course, like showering flowers on them. So it's like a rare situation in this country. May I request Vivek to respond? Vivek? Am I audible, Vivek?
Yeah, Dr. Ravi, am I audible now?
Yes, yes. You want
I would like to.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would like to take one question there in the Q&A that how plasma sterilizer will play important role for COVID. I think most of the panelists, if you see today, have been discussing about infection control and the kind of measures which have been taken in the hospital. And post-COVID pandemic, whenever it ends, I feel the emphasis is going to be there in infection control, and I think more kind of compliances and protocols would be set. And that is where plasma sterilizer like Sterad would help hospitals to bridge this gap of sterilization in various departments. Yeah, even I like to add to Dr. Punthambekar's point, wherein they also mentioned that there is the government which is going to come in now. So if you see today in infrastructure, health infrastructure, government has got also major stake. And that is the place where the infection control will also be given importance, and the hospitals, that is where the Sterad plasma sterilizer will help them. And already hospitals like Reliance, and Nanavati already taking the benefits of this technology in this COVID situation, but reusing the N95 masks. And going forward, this will definitely also help them to add value in various other cases. Thank you.
Great, Vivek. Thank you. Dr. Rajendra, you want to answer something?
Dr.
I think.
Sorry, there was a question. Oh, sorry. I'll let you.
Sorry, I think Dr. Shailesh made a very relevant point with respect to government now taking initiative to ensure that we become the manufacturing hub of all those things where we are right now finding it difficult to actually procure, whether it is the PPE kits or the N95 masks or the ventilators. I mean, we have a capacity to actually manufacture in India, and actually uniquely capable now, because a lot of industries are looking at wanting to ship their purchasing source base from China, and probably India should actually look at capitalizing on that particular opportunity to ensure that we have enough capabilities of marketing, manufacturing in India. See, different is like, let's say, the IITs of India, along with the healthcare industry. A lot of innovative things, a lot of innovative brains which are there in the IITs and the healthcare industry needs to put their minds together to create something here in India itself. And it needs to be promoted. It needs to be promoted in a big way. I know Dr. Patkar works very closely with a lot of such initiatives with the IIT. And I think that is the need of the hour now, so that tomorrow we are better prepared to handle any such situation coming ahead.
Correct. Maruti Suzuki and Mahindra can manufacture ventilator in 1 month. I'm sure we have brains and abilities to do that. We don't use it. That is the unfortunate thing.
So, Dr. Gupta, may I add one thing? To
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Yes. So, two things. I am associated with the Pan IIT group, which is working on this. So, there is a group which is in India and globally across different batches. And they've all been working on developing technologies for various things. And many of the things which you are seeing now are coming out of that group, which is the ventilators and PPEs and new innovations, including the chambers, sanitation chambers. So there is a lot of work going on. There was one question which I thought I can answer. And then I saw one question was directed to Dr. Tarang and Dr. Patankar, so they can answer that. So one question was regarding what happens to patients who have other diseases and in this time. So the answer to that, whoever asked that, is that the emergency patients are being treated by hospitals, and there is a triage facility And if it can be managed by video consult or teleconsult, it is being done. If not, they come to the hospital and they are being treated. And so that's the answer to that. And I think Dr. Patankar and Dr. Tarang, they have here somebody's question on waste management. I'll let them answer that.
Dr. Tarang, you want to answer some question on the waste management issue?
May I?
I'm just trying to look at the chat. Maybe Patankar can answer that.
Please.
Sorry, even I have not been able to see the chat at all here. Somehow
May I
some
answer
glitch here.
because I saw the question.
Yeah, what's the question?
Waste management. Dr. Patankar, this is about waste management. How have you changed your biological waste management in the current situation?
Sorry, biological waste management.
Management of COVID patients and how it is different from your previous situation.
I think with regard to biomedical waste management, there are very clear-cut guidelines which have been laid down, and everybody has to follow those guidelines. There is no other way to it.
Because we want to know how it is different from the previous situation, pre-COVID situation. How currently we are different.
So for COVID cases, sorry to butt in. For COVID cases, there is specific instructions from the local people who collect the waste, as well as the guidelines which have been now come in biomedical waste management and handling rules, a 2019 amendment specifically for COVID, in which we have to segregate that waste specifically, seal it in another yellow bag, and put it in the yellow waste is in simple words. Plus one more question related with this, which I can see on the panel, is about the mortuary and the dead bodies. Again, the change here is that the dead bodies have to be again in the water proof, or I would say there should be impermeable cover of this thing so that it can be directly taken to the crematorium, or as the case may be as per the religion, and it is handed over there, and it is not handed over to the relatives also, even to the extent that the corporation now is not permitting even to open up those bags anywhere in between for relatives. That from the waste management point, as well as from the mortuary point, as well as from the dead body point, I think this is very, very relevant amendments which have come in the guidelines. Sorry.
I think there is one question which has come specifically for me to address, which is basically how we are managing other patients. So I'll just take it up, and so the fact is that as I outlined in the beginning itself, we had two locations now. The Seven Hills is geographically quite distant, and at Reliance Foundation Hospital at the Opera House, we have a non-COVID, completely normal hospital facility. So we do video conferencing. So we have laid down a whole video conferencing platform since last now almost 3 weeks. And most of the patients, and in fact, initially it was 25% patients were seen physically, but now at this point of time, all screening at first level is done through video conferencing platform. And if there is an emergency, whether it's regards to chemotherapy, dialysis, maternity, some surgeries, which like last night we did an intestinal obstruction, and oncosurgeries. So all these things we do have a provision in our theaters to do it, but as a precaution, we try and do the swabbing of all our patients who are admitted, and only after the swab 0 day comes negative that we take up the patients for surgery. For maternity, we have requested our obstetricians that all the patients, we do a home collection for their swabs 38 weeks, at 38 weeks, and before the patient is wheeled in, whether for normal labor or LACS, we try to ensure that the swab is done 24 hours before. Most of the patients have cooperated. Somewhere, wherever there are issues with finance, we waive off the charges for the swab, because I think that's most important for safety of everyone. And we are continuing whatever is the normal services required. Same goes for chemotherapy patient, same goes for dialysis patient. Most importantly, what we are also doing, we are regularly taking the swab of our healthcare professionals, which we do it very regularly. So those who are in the high risk areas, we do their swabs, and most of them sometimes come up with requirements for prophylaxis medication. So after taking due precautions, if required, we are going and giving to them whatever prophylaxis they require as far as the medication is concerned, provided medically they can do it. And I think the government has also laid down very clear guidelines that all those who are above 60 should be not coming in direct contact with the patient. So that all has been done. So that's why we are able to manage all the non-COVID emergencies here. But at any point of time, if there is a patient, he is in emergency, the swab report is not there, then we go ahead and do it as a COVID patient in our facility. And with the theaters where the pressures can be controlled, and with the doctors in PPE and disinfection protocols followed along the workflow, the whole operational pathway, I think it should be fine. So far, we have not faced it, but we have a guideline to be activated. The SOP will be activated, suppose we come across such a patient.
Great. I think have we exhausted all the questions or most of it, because we are running out of time. We have already spent 1.5 hours here. And, so if you all allow, we can conclude here. And I can request all the panelists all the attendees, if you have got further questions. I think most of the panelists are available on the social media. They are on the LinkedIn, I suppose. You can contact them, and if by any chance you are not able to reach out to them, you can contact my email ID. I have written here. My email ID is ravi.gupta@edets.in, and you can also look at the ehealth.eletsonline.com portal and follow eHealth on all the social media, and look at further panels like this, where you may find a lot of new ideas and innovations which are happening in the healthcare sector. So I will thank Vivek Suryavanshi and ASP for being a partner for this very informative panel. And thank you, Gautam ji, Dr. Tarang. Thank you, Dr. Deepak, Vivek, Dr. Rajendra, Dr. Sunil Rao, Dr. Salesh, all of you for really an amazing and very informative panel. And I request all the panelists and the audience to please share the video and report of this panel on social media, so that great ideas reach to a lot more people, and everyone supports and understands the important role which the healthcare sector right now is doing and saving all of us from the COVID-19 situation. So I really am thankful to all of you for joining here. And I will say namaskar to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.